Kylie, thank you very much, and thank you to Forbes Mazars for having me here today. This is my first time with Forbes as a speaker. I attended their terrific conference down in Florida several months ago, and we started talking about what it is that I do and how I might be an asset to you as attendees at this conference. By way of my background, I spent 2 decades running the largest mortgage fraud investigation company in the country called IMARC. We did, to my calculation, something over 70,000 mortgage fraud investigations over the course of 7 or 8 years. And our clients were largely the mortgage insurance companies. I am a certified anti-money laundering specialist. I am a lawyer, though not practicing. And for 10 years, I was a loan officer. So I have this weird kind of resume that brings kind of all kinds of skill sets to bear. Probably my claim to fame, at least my mother would tell you my claim to fame, was that I got a phone call asking to assist in the investigation of some loan files by 60 Minutes. So 3 months later, I find myself knee to knee, mic'd up, talking to Scott Pelley at the Four Seasons in San Francisco, going through some loan fraud files to help him understand what he was looking at. And then the producer, Graham Messick, called me a couple days later and said, "Do you want to be in it? We're casting it." And I said, "Absolutely. You can count on me." So we filmed this segment on a problem of stated income loans, fraudulent income loans out of San Francisco. Today, I want to talk to you about risk assessment. Mark hit it on the head when he said it's really important, and becoming more important, your risk assessment and how you establish protocols around that. So I'm going to come at it today from the perspective of mortgage lending, but I'm going to express some principles that are going to help you even if you guys don't make home loans. Even if you're involved in something else, there are some risk assessment and management tools that I want to share with you. No, I went backwards. So I'm going to spend a little bit of time on the BSA AML framework. We're going to talk about risk assessment, give you some tools and tips that are going to help you hopefully manage the risks inside of your organization, because as Mark explained to you, it's becoming increasingly important. I want to talk first a little bit. I was talking to Cody about money muling and laundering cash. Let's talk a little bit about what that is, just to make sure we're all on the same page, because not everyone has the same level of comfort about what money laundering is. Despite Ozark and Breaking Bad and all of the tutorials, shows that seem to be online now about money laundering, people can get a little fuzzy about it. So placement, layering, and integration are the 3 steps that are commonly referred to. Placement, I'm going to illustrate it like this. Take $100 dirty dollars. You just dealt some cocaine. You take $1,000. Take it down to Home Depot or CVS and buy gift cards. Just buy gift cards. That's called placement. And you've taken dirty cash. It smells like dirty cash. It's got bad things on it. And you exchange it for gift cards that are, whew, that's out of my hands. That's not smelly cash anymore. And then you're going to layer it. So you just bought that dirty cash. You used your dirty cash to buy gift cards. Now go back to the store the next day and buy the same amount of gift cards with clean money. You got this on your construction job. You got this legitimately. Take them home, mix them up on your kitchen table, and that's called integration, where you've taken the dirty stuff, blended it with the clean stuff, and now law enforcement's not going to know which of those cards you bought with dirty cash and which were bought with clean cash. You've mixed yourself up. You don't even know. You slip one of those gift cards in a birthday card for your niece, and that is laundered money. That is now entering the stream of commerce. It was dirty. It is now clean cash. If you want to do more than just gift cards, think bigger. Think real estate. Make improvements on cash. It is not hard to find contractors who would make improvements on your house for cash. That's not hard at all. So you buy a junker. You decide to blow out walls, add a kitchen, do the landscape, add a floor, add a wing. You do it all with cash. Say you buy a little junker for $200,000, you put 100 into it, and you turn it into a $400,000 or $500,000 house. When you sell that, that wire hits your account, that's clean money. You've cleaned it up because you took it and you did it with dirty money that you injected into the stream of commerce, okay? That is how you go bigger. Instead of just not gift cards, you're now using real estate. And real estate around the world is one of the prime ways to launder money. Walt, raise your hand if you've seen Breaking Bad. Half of us, a little more than half of us. Think how many cars you got to wash to launder $1 million, okay? You don't have to sell that many houses to launder $1 million. So throughout the world, real estate has become a primary vehicle to launder cash. So that means you, that means us, that means everybody who's doing mortgages. Now, Mark started here, we talked about the pillars of the BSA program, the budding importance of risk assessment, but you've got to have a BSA officer, duly appointed, adequately supported, and boy is that rich for commentary, adequately supported. Do you have the budget? Do you have the staff? I think the first time in my life I've heard we have BSA assistants was here yesterday. I think most people are struggling to feel adequately supported as a BSA officer, and yet that's the corporate obligation, is to make sure that they're adequately supported. They do a risk assessment, which is what we're going to talk about here today. Do the policies and procedures around your specific risk, because you have risks that nobody else has. If you do all of your business in one county, you have different risks than if you work through a broker network throughout the entire country, and your business becomes more anonymous. Those risks are different. So the duty on the BSA officer is to look with a savvy eye at the risks that you've got, the type of business, the geography of your business, and assess just exactly what those risks are. As I talk to BSA officers and as I talk to senior management, I think these are the skills that are valued by those who run BSA departments. BSA officers love metrics. They run metrics to see aberrations in origination data, to see aberrations in default data. You can gather so much by metrics, and BSA officers tend to be big fans of metrics. They're good writers because you have to write to the board, you have to write to senior management, and most scary of all, you have to write to the feds. You have to do these SAR reports, and those can be intimidating. Experience. I find that no one starts out their career to say, I'm going to be a BSA officer. You kind of find your way into it through compliance, through origination, or knowing your business. And BSA officers are no fools. They don't suffer fools gladly. They know how your business works. And so they bring that experience to it. Judgment. Judgment is important because there comes a point where you have to decide whether you're going to take a set of suspicious facts and report that to the feds or you are not. And you've got a particularly difficult row to hoe sometimes if you're butting up against maybe some of the sales inside of your organization. There can be conflicts between those desiring prudence and those desiring sales, and it can be a real friction point. All right, so let's talk about risk management. This is the classic acronym for risk management. If you are going to handle the risk within your organization, you have to make it specific, measurable. It's got to be achievable, relevant, and timely. No horse out of the barn. You've got to get this, and you've got to be able to defend your metrics. I want to add a few things to that mantra of being smart about risk assessment, but remember smart because you need to measure your own actions against it. Among my skill sets, I am a pilot, and pilots spend a lot of time worried about risk. Anybody in here a pilot? No hands. a lot of your training is on risk management. You have yourself to manage. 8 hours bottle to throttle. You've got rules about when you can fly. Are you anxious? Are you stressed? Have you just come out of a fight? One of the accident studies that you study when you're getting your pilot's license is John F. Kennedy Jr.'s accident off in New York, and all of the mistakes that were made by him, including the day that he got in his accident, he had to have his cast removed. He was late to the airport. Traffic was bad in Manhattan. And he was trying to get to a wedding. So he had all this pressure. I have to go, I have to go. And as many people have thought about it afterwards, you were a Kennedy. You could have called the G5 and flown up there. That wasn't going to be a problem. You didn't have to fly your own plane. But I think he was trying to impress his wife, his sister-in-law, and he flew when about 10 factors were against him. Okay? So risk assessment is first prioritized. You and your business have priorities, and you need to be, as the BSA officer, in those discussions at the highest level of your organization about what your priorities are. And let me give some context to that. In the crash of 2008, how many were in the business in 2008? Half, more than half. I think it's fair to say that a lot of the priorities from some of the major lenders that went bust during the crash got out of whack. They were going for market share. They were going for short-term profits, not long. They got their priorities a little out of whack, and it led to the origination of a bunch of loans that shouldn't have been originated. What voices were not heard in the boardroom during 2005, 6, and 7? Hey, maybe we shouldn't make those loans. They might not be safe. Those voices got stifled. So inside of every organization, there needs to be a balancing of these voices about what our priorities are as a company. For pilots, I can do this. I've seen this done. Aviate, navigate, communicate. Have you ever had the experience where you're about to land and then you're not landing anymore and you're taking off and you're going around? It's like, that's so discomforting. It's just, why are we not landing? You'll notice the pilot never says anything. They never come out, oh, hey, ladies and gentlemen, sorry, we're going around. You're going around because he's aviating, navigating, and communicating. He's got a plane to fly. And he even surprised the tower with this go-around move. He saw he was over, left, right, up, too high, too low. Surprises himself, but you throttle up, you put up the flaps, and you take off. And when you are stabilized going away, then you'll talk to the tower. Hey, we're going around. Okay, and there are procedures for that, but there's a whole lot going on when you miss your approach. You aren't comforting passengers. One time on a plane from LAX to Hawaii, bam, the oxygen masks all came down. Anybody ever had that happen? Okay, that's a weird one, I know. We were about 40 minutes out of Los Angeles and the oxygen mask came down. Boom. The very first thought I had was, I do not smell smoke. That was the very first thought. Because I did. I smelled the discharge of the oxygen mask as it came down, but my first response was denial. I do not smell smoke. Yes, I do. And then he's got to get down from 30,000 feet to 10,000 feet, and he's in a dive. So you're in a 747, I don't smell smoke, and it's diving on you. No word from the pilot. They don't say anything because his priority is he has a plane to fly. He'll worry about calming your nerves later. Priorities, set them in your own organization. Make sure that everybody's clear on the prudence that you want to exercise in your loan origination, your business practices. Make sure that everybody's clear on that and that the compliance and BSA people have a voice in that. Checklists for urgent, critical matters. Let's say you suspect fraud. For those kinds of urgent, critical matters, you should think out what are the steps, who gets alerted, and in what order. You all seen the Sully movie where he loses both engines, right out of LaGuardia, and they reach for a checklist. What happens if you lose both engines? It's just not a checklist you ever want to have to reach for. But Jeff Skiles, the first officer, reaches for it and they're going through it, and that's exactly what happens. You go for checklists, and even though you've done things a million times, you still read them off a checklist. When I start a little single-engine Cessna, there are at least 20 things on my to-do list, and I go down every one of them, and I speak them out loud, and I make sure that I've done everything on my checklist. Your auditors will love you for that. Get your checklist in order. Training. Can't say enough about it. Every year, you've got to get BSA training from your new hires to the board. That's great. Some people go, oh, I know all this stuff. Well, the only thing I would say to you is Michael Jordan had a coach always. Always somebody to tell him where to move, what to do. Even the best, train. And you do it every year because muscle memory is important. Do you know that feeling when you're watching somebody on television or in a movie and you can tell they've never been on a horse before? That they're bouncing, they're riding like this, right? It's a different deal than if you see somebody on a horse and it's elegant and smooth and they know what they're doing, and you can tell in a heartbeat that somebody knows what they're doing on that horse, and you can really tell that they don't know. That muscle memory only comes through training, and if you can remember far back to COVID, when pilots weren't really flying much, what was not comforting was hearing pilots say, I'm a little rusty. That landing, that's not real comfortable. I got to get my skills back. That's just not what I want to hear out of my commercial pilot. But training is a way to keep sharp. And finally, expect the unexpected. When I was completing vendor questionnaires, I run a consultancy and I'm completing these questionnaires. One of the questions that I always thought was ridiculous was, what would you do in the event of a pandemic? And I just thought that was the dumbest thing. I don't know. I don't have any plan for a pandemic, and I really don't think that's relevant. But they would ask you in California. So what would you do in the event that you're wiped out in an earthquake? That was one. But expecting the unexpected is important when you're doing your risk assessment. Mike Tyson famously said that everyone has a plan until they get hit in the mouth. And then who knows what you're going to do. Think through unrealistic, strange things that could come up and get you. Local flooding. I think that's hit a few people here. I see some nods, unfortunately. You've got things that might be strange. Build them into your risk assessment. Build them into the things that you're going to consider when you are establishing risk for your organization. Now, in the mortgage sector that I come from, what I see people doing that is pretty smart is they're running statistics, they're running metrics on their producers, their sources of business. And whether you're doing mortgages or you're doing other kinds of banking, you know what's normal, you know what's expected. Watch your metrics internally, and you will find that you develop policies and procedures about the risks that are evident only when you run the numbers. What are those risks? Starting now, FinCEN wants their risks to be your risks. And you say, well, what are those risks? They include things like countering the financing of terrorism. I could talk to 10 mortgage people, that's never going to make their list of risks. They're going to talk about defaults, they're going to talk about other things, but they never even think about it. But FinCEN wants you to look at their list of expected priorities and to have your risks based on their priorities, no matter how strange they seem to you. Corruption, yeah, okay. Cybercrime, all right, less so. I one time saw somebody whose down payment was coming from the liquidation of frozen shrimp. It's not cybercrime, but you can get down payments from weird places. Terrorist financing, fraud, that's you. That's mortgage fraud. That's false verifications of employment, false verifications of assets. And finally, proliferation of weapons. I want you to build these into the things that you're considering when you're developing your risk assessment. They want you to. Their priorities are your priorities. Now, let me talk about some risks and get management lessons from the risks. Somebody keep me on time. What time is it?
1:20.
It's 1:20. Okay, I'm good.
And if you go long,
I'm good. I promise. I'm after lunch, so it's more forgivable if I go long. Dishonesty from industry insiders. Let me talk about this particular case. When I was a loan officer, I went to a rah-rah seminar in Palm Springs, California, offered by Todd Duncan, big sales presenter, and he had a panel of 4 top producing loan officers, putting up the kinds of numbers that just leave you staggered. Like your whole office doesn't do that much business, but each one of these loan officers was a star performer. On the panel was a kid, 23, 4, 5 years old, sharp, looked like this guy. So far out of the norm, he said that he believed in himself, so he maxed out his credit cards. He believed in himself, so he leased the big Mercedes, and in a year had wrapped up all of the top producing real estate agents in La Jolla, California. I mean, one of the toniest little sections of coastline you've ever seen. Yeah, I wrapped up all that business. I've got all that business. I sat there with some experienced loan officers, and we looked at each other and we said, does this make any sense to you? Does anybody just blow into town, into La Jolla, and in a year wrap up all the top producing RE/MAX agents? I don't see it. Something's wrong here. Well, sure enough, 12 months later, the FBI swooped in, picked this kid up, and grabbed all his files. He was closing those hard-to-close deals and getting a reputation inside of RE/MAX like, hey, this kid, if you got a tough loan, this guy will get it done for you. Well, he was cheating. The management point is sometimes your experience makes you think things just aren't right and you need to dig a little bit. And it doesn't come from anything other than the time you've spent on the water, in the saddle, whatever your expertise is, and you go, that's not right. And a 23 or 24-year-old who suddenly had wrapped up one of the best parts of California real estate didn't make sense to us. And sure enough, it did blow apart. So, people breaking norms. Look for people breaking norms. Clients pushing you to cheat. I had a real estate agent come to me and say, I would like you to do a 20% down home loan on this $1 million property for the owner of an art gallery. And I said, terrific. Number one, I wanted the business of this agent, and it was a big loan, and I was thrilled to do it. So I met with the owner of the art gallery, and I said, we had a lovely talk, and I'm taking the loan application, and I said, where's your down payment coming from? And he said, none of your business. Oh, okay. And I asked it again. No, I've got it, and that's all you need to know. So I tried my charming best. No go. I go back to the realtor, and I go, hey, this is a problem because you got to disclose where your down payment's coming from. So we got together with the borrower, and it was a hard no. I suspect his dad was a famous artist. I suspect that he was going to sell one of his dad's paintings. Okay, he was a very famous artist. Hard no, still wouldn't do it. They pulled the loan from me, and they got it funded somewhere else. The realtor was very unhappy with me, and he was spreading it around his real estate office that if Simpson knew how to originate loans, he could have gotten this easy loan closed. I said, I was burning on that. I was like, hey, I don't deserve to get burned. I was trying to play this, straight, and this guy wants to cheat. I have no doubt they closed this loan eventually through somebody who was willing to cook up some bank statements. But now here's your management question. You have a duty to check out your clients, customer information, know your customer, enhance due diligence. We've got all these acronyms for basically the same thing, which is know your clients. Make sure they're not crooks. You have an obligation to do that. Does it apply to this realtor who we know is kind of bent and kind of pushing us to do dishonest things? If he comes into us with another deal, mind you, he's only a referral source. We're just not crazy about his ethics, right? Do you have a legal duty to go, whoa, it's one of that guy's loans, we better do enhanced due diligence on this thing? I think maybe you don't legally. I think the lawyers would say, well, it's not really your client, you don't have a relationship, but he's a referral source. I say it to tell you that in the world of mortgages and real estate, we have some weird extended kind of know your customer kind of issues to talk about. Does one crooked attempt to get your loan officer to do something bad count? Or would it take two? Or would it take three? And what do you do when the loans in the future come from this real estate agent? So, there I'm going backwards again, sorry. Organized criminal rings, they're out there. We were asked to audit loan files for this one originator, and we had a truck driver, an interstate truck driver with a Schedule C. And on that Schedule C, you know, we do this funny thing in the mortgage industry where we will add back your depreciation because it's a phantom expense, and we're going to give that back to you. That's not a real expense, that's a phantom expense. So his tax returns showed $30,000 of income, but he had $50,000 of depreciation for his big rig truck. So all of a sudden he's making $80,000. Got it, the $30,000 of his income and the $50,000 added back mysteriously. All right, let's go grab a few other files from this same loan brokerage. We grabbed 10 of them, and they all had truck drivers with $50,000 even of depreciation added back to all of their Schedule Cs. Every one of them. They had income somewhere in the 30 to 35 range, and then boom, 50 added on top of it, and they were all homeowners. Well, as management, what do you learn here? I have real concerns about my loan officer. Are you telling me this guy, whoever was originating these loans, had no idea that this was going on, never had a conversation? What's his relationship with this CPA? How did those two meet? Why are you picking on me? Did you do these through other lenders? I got all kinds of questions I want to ask if I have a professional CPA cooking up stuff that is getting fraudulent loans through. Loans not of investment quality. And, you know, a lot of the public thinks, oh, well, it's just a little, you know, funny business with accounting. It's not. It makes your loan not of investment quality. And when that happens, you can have real problems. And it does, in fact, rise to the level of a SAR. I think you got to take this and say, oh, man, I got this CPA cooking up stuff, getting people home loans who shouldn't get them. Near me, when I was originating, this sounds like it's from a John Grisham novel, but I swear it's true. There was a bar called Silky Sullivan's. I love this story so much. Again, it's John Grisham. Silky Sullivan's, and on top of Silky Sullivan's, in a little dingy office, was a CPA that for $400 would give you any tax returns and pay stubs that you wanted. And every realtor within 50 miles knew that for $400 they could get their borrower all the papers they needed. That story is so perfect because of the Silky Sullivans. It's just perfect because of that. But every realtor knew where they could go get false documents to get their loans closed. Those kinds of things need investigation. I will remind you right now, when you file your SARs, it need not be proof beyond a reasonable doubt. It's just suspicions. That's all you have to do. But if I were to write a suspicious activity report on Silky Sullivan's, I would name the bar, I would name the CPA, I would name one of the realtors that I know, and I would even put in the scuttlebutt. It's pretty well known that this guy's well known in the area, and here's his name and here's what he's doing. I want to stress, you are free to speculate in your SARs. You don't have to prove it beyond a reasonable doubt. You have protection when you file them. They're confidential. And you're not ever going to find that it's alleged that you disparaged somebody because you filed a SAR. That's not going to happen to you. Insider knowledge reflecting underwriting knowledge. This one is a fraud that got caught by Fannie Mae. It happened in California, where they were not faking tax returns, they were not faking pay stubs, they were not faking bank statements. They faked court orders showing that the borrower was getting a substantial amount of child support. And the underwriters were just taking these and saying, thanks, great, hey, that's good child support, and the ratios worked. The child support was generally bigger than normal, and it made the file. So if the borrower was working at a local food service establishment, they also were showing $4,000 and $5,000 a month in child support, and thus qualifying for these mortgages. Where they screwed up was that the perpetrators were using court numbering that did not apply to the court that was granting the court orders. They were taking Ventura County court orders and trying to make them work in Los Angeles, and Ventura County has a VC on their court numbers, and that just doesn't work in downtown Los Angeles. So Fannie caught this one, sent out a big notice to everybody saying, look out for child support. It's out there. Now, it raises another risk management sort of tool that I embrace, and that is open communication in your shop between underwriters and loan originators, okay? We call them Freaky Fridays. Bring your people together and go, what weird stuff have you seen? This may rise to the top. CPAs with $50,000 of depreciation added back may surface. You may find things in your Freaky Fridays that by themselves aren't that strange, but when you put them in another room and somebody goes, hey, I've seen that. There was a big fraud that was caught in Southern California by an underwriter. It was the Allstate case, not the insurance company, but a mortgage brokerage named Allstate. And there was an underwriter who said, hey, I've seen this appraisal before. And this crime ring was just using the same appraisal and just swapping out the cover sheets. And I've seen this same property. And they started grabbing these files all from Allstate, and it turns out that they were just duplicating appraisals. A lot of these properties didn't even exist. But it got caught by an aware person who said, hey, I've seen this before. Use Freaky Fridays to get your people talking about, buy a pizza, bring people in, start talking about strange files that might reveal patterns you might not otherwise find. Here's one that's been rampant recently, miracle employment. If you're a loan officer, what you don't want to see is somebody has had 6 jobs in the last 3 years, 2 were commissioned, 2 were salaried, 2 different fields, sold cars, drove a bus, just a bad employment history. Miracle employment. The borrower, his problems are solved when generally a relative says, you're hired. You're hired for $8,000 a month, and I hire you March 1 for $8,000 a month. March, April, he buys a house, he puts it in escrow, and 1st of June, he's got 2 months pay stubs. They're real pay stubs from a real company. They really exist. And the only thing that's fake about that loan is the VOE that says, what are the chances of continued employment? They say terrific, but there's 0 chance of continued employment. So if they start at $8,000 a month, March and April, when they close on their house the 1st of June, there's some arrangement to pay back that employer $16,000. Maybe we get a second on the house. There's some arrangement to pay the employer back. Well, Fannie caught on to this one too. And the evidence of these files is really terrible job history, and then all of a sudden a magic cure salary. Now, when I've seen these, I'll find that the magic cure employment traces back to somebody's house. I'll do the Google search. I'll find the property of the employer, and you're not making $8,000 as a bookkeeper working out of somebody's home. That just is too abnormal. And then you find out that the owner of the home is the boyfriend, husband, relative, whatever. And then you find you've got miracle employment. One of the most common, occupancy misrepresentation. Absolutely one of the most common misrepresentations. And people don't think that it's that serious. The public doesn't think that occupancy misrepresentation is that serious. But it is, because it makes your loan not of investment quality. Somebody says they're going to live in a certain home, and they're not. I think my own prejudice is I think a lot of Airbnbs were purchased with owner-occupied financing that actually people weren't living there. I think that's the case. But illustrating the fact that a lot of people just don't take this as seriously as we do, it has become so common. It's so common to find occupancy misrepresentation on files. And one of the ways that you find it is you will see a Airbnb listing the day after that your loan closes. It's just available for rent right after. Sometimes they get sloppy and they post them on Airbnb or VRBO the week before they're supposed to close, and that should kill the deal. That should be all. All right. Elder abuse. Common, happens, terrible when it happens. We had a loan that showed that an 84-year-old woman was moving from her home above Diamond Head to North Las Vegas. Now, I've been to North Las Vegas. It's no Diamond Head. It didn't make any sense that this woman would move from a paid-off home to North Las Vegas, which is not a garden spot. So we called. We called the borrower, and we said, she was delightful. She was just delightful. We said, this loan is in process. You're buying this home in North Las Vegas. Are you moving there? And she said, oh, no, that's for my grandson while he goes to UNLV. Oh, okay. And then she has this lovely conversation with me about living in Diamond Head her whole life and how it's changed. She couldn't have been more adorable. The next day, the loan officer / borrower, the both of them, called me to say that they understood I talked to Grandma yesterday, and I shouldn't take what she says seriously because she gets confused. I thought, man, you guys, you just threw Grandma under the bus. She was delightful. She was not confused about anything. You guys are guilty that I'm finding you out and you're calling me to throw Grandma under the bus. Well, when things like that happen, you, as the BSA officer, if you've got risk responsibilities, compliance responsibilities, you not only have a potential loan problem, but you probably have an HR problem. This is probably not a loan officer you want to have working for you anymore. If it comes to you through a correspondent, you're going to want to have a talk with them about what is and is not acceptable to getting people home loans. All right. I thought I would leave a few minutes here at the end to address any questions. The only dumb question was Paul McCartney in a band before Wings. But other than that, on a scale of 1 to 10, are you adequately supported? How did you find your way to BSA and compliance? How many SARs do you file in a year? I want some feedback on that. What tools do you use to monitor transactions? And if I could get y'all to give me stories now or in emails this coming week. I love the stories that I'm hearing about the challenges of AML, BSA risk, compliance, but I don't have experience with tellers and bags of cash. That's not mine, and I love the stories that have been shared here because it opens up my eyes to the risks that depositories face that mortgage lenders don't face. I have this whole history with mortgage fraud, but to hear how a woman can skim a little off the top with every CD, I couldn't believe it. So I want your war stories because I will incorporate them into the things that I do in my business when I'm teaching risk. And so verbally today, tomorrow, or in writing, I encourage you to send me your best story because I know you have them. I know you have these stories. Let me go to the third point, SARs. How many have filed 3 or more in the last year? Pretty good. How many have filed 5 or more? Okay, what's your top number? How many? Yeah.
Are we talking the follow-ups too?
No, just the original SARs.
20.
20. Anybody beat 20?
180.
Woohoo! 108.
Well, remember, asset side.
Okay.
I mean, if you said 20, we're gonna file a SAR on you. So
About million.
You're doing very well for millions. Very well, very well.
I think we've done more than 200.
Have you really?
Yeah.
Okay. Has there been significant / any follow-up by federal authorities on your SARS? A hand goes up.
I just had one.
Okay.
And we're a very small bank. I told them about this yesterday, but first time ever in my life I've gotten a phone call. So,
Interesting. Well, thank you for that. I couldn't be happier to be teaching this subject. I enjoy this more than I can tell you. From the industry that I come from, these are the best stories. And I hope that what I presented today gives you some principles to think about whether or not you're doing mortgages. It gives you some parameters, some framework to frame up your own risk assessments. Thank you very much.
Before you sit down, an interesting vignette. You gotta be careful with that, the only really dumb question. Okay? Because I was talking to a 20-year-old.
oh, Mark,
I
I'm
said,
not funny.
I said, was Paul McCartney in a band before Wings? And she said, what was Wings?
I'll say that.
So thank you so much, Bob. We really